Forget ghosts, goblins, and haunted houses. For many, money is a far scarier thing than anything, and Halloween has us in store
Say your first name
for a
me.
lot of that. But do I need to say any more? Well, because a lot of scary financial facts.
Yes. Yeah. Say it,
And
please.
face them head on and set your family up for success in the long run. Anthony Williams, president of Mosaic Financial Associates, is here joining us to help us with 3 scary financial facts that we need to avoid and not become a statistic of that scary money. That's a lot there to say, Anthony, but it's not a lot for us to learn how to make sure that we are planning out our future right. And why is it so scary for people to talk money?
I think that a lot of it is rooted in pathology. When you have parents that perhaps didn't have open conversations with their children as they were growing up, and then that goes generation to generation to generation. I think that especially in today's environment of the social media, where everyone likes to present their best life, regardless of the reality of that being rooted in actual truth, well, that costs money in many cases. And so we want to present one image, but the reality is we might drive a Ferrari, but we're living in an apartment. So we kind of put those things together.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about saving money, because again, that's a scary thing people have, and we know there's some, of course, stats out there about money saving, about what people need to do. But how do we start? How do we get to saving, especially for someone like me? I'm in my 50s, and I've been saving, but I want to do more, so I am financially okay.
Well, first off, I'd like to know what you're doing to look that good at 50. But beyond that, it's the basics. It's always the basics. If I were to pull a parable from the Old Testament, the wise man built his house upon the rock. And it's very discipline equals freedom. We say, hey, I'm going to save $1 a day, right? I'm going to cut out Dutch Bros once in a while. I'm going to maybe, instead of having all the streaming platforms, I'm only going to have one or none of the streaming platforms, because I have these financial priorities that are important to me. And it's really, we need to take incremental steps. When you think about the fact that 61% of Americans don't even have $1,000 saved for an emergency, that's a scary statistic right there. And so what can we do? It's really about cutting back where we can, or that's comfortable. And sometimes emergently, we kind of need to do that, right? And then the second thing is to put those dollars aside and don't touch them. No more touching.
I like that. Okay, I have friends who, how can I say this, live their life on credit cards, and they have that feeling going, I'll get it now, I'll take care of it later. Is that something that we really need to pay attention to?
Absolutely. In fact, that's scary statistic number 2, Brad, which is 40% of Americans carry credit card debt. And so what that often ends up being a result of is poor spending habits. And once we have those habits, it's just like anything else, right? If we go to the gym or we eat right, those are habits. If we spend excessively, that's a habit. And so ultimately it comes down to, are we willing to make the commitment and the sacrifice to ourselves and to our family to say, hey, I'm not going to spend this much. I recall years ago, there was a skit on Saturday Night Live. Steve Martin was one of the main players. I can't remember who his on-screen wife was, but it was right during that time of the Great Recession, where everybody was just pulling money out of their homes to buy stuff. And the whole premise of this bit was, hey, look, this pamphlet says, if you don't have the money, you don't buy it, And so that's just, we have to have that delayed gratification. And Brad, you know as well as I do, a lot of folks aren't all that interested in delayed gratification.
Yeah. Okay. What's our last thing that scares us about finances?
Well, the big one is retirement. I think we all kind of wax nostalgically about what retirement is going to be or how it's supposed to be. And the reality is that greater than a third of Americans have nothing saved for retirement, and the next 10 to 20% might have about 10 grand.
Wow.
So we need to start putting money away. We need to spend less. We need to save more. And there are vehicles to do that. We should have an emergency reserve of about 3 to 6 months of our salary. We should have a retirement account. Obviously, I can't get into the specifics of how or what people should invest in, but those are where we're going to really gain the most kind of bang for our buck, if you will, on the long-term basis to have that financial security.
Yeah. Can I say this, Anthony, as we're getting ready to wrap up here, is that everybody can invest, everybody can save no matter what. Can we say that?
We absolutely can say that. And it's something that I wish the messaging was more prevalent out there, that, hey, we are going to have medium-term and long-term responsibilities, much less the short-term unexpected things that come up. Why would we not want to have money set aside so we can just go through our day without having to worry about that? Now, look, I realize, Brad, it's hard for some folks. You know, if we're paycheck to paycheck and we're like, I only have 12 bucks left to fill the gas tank. Well, it is what it is. But generally speaking, if we do a deep dive, we can find areas to pull back in terms of spending, because unlike our friends in Congress, hopefully we can have a little bit more fiscal responsibility.
I like it right there. Anthony, tell them where they can find out, of course, how to get a hold of you to start planning their future or to continue their future into retirement.
You bet. www.mosaicfa.com. Mosaicfa.com.
Perfect. Anthony, thank you very much for joining us.
Glad to be here, Brad.